ashram for 24 years, where she gives spiritual discourses, teaches meditation, and leads myriad humanitarian programs, just as we have seen. And we also witnessed this beautiful lamp lightning right from there. So I request Sadhviji to enlighten us further on this topic. Sadhviji, please.
It's such a wonderful joy to be with you all here today and to be able to join you from the banks of Mother Ganga, to be able to come together from this sacred and beautiful, beautiful land. I love being asked to talk about the spiritual quotient. It's not the sort of thing that you would expect to be there in a summit of how to become a millionaire, and a summit about business, and a summit about that level of prosperity. But what we know actually is that spirituality is that which...
Can you do that after this? Shit. Yeah, we do that. So I'll do that. Of course, so I'll do that. And if you can tell Sadhviji that there's a disturbance.
I can hear you. I'm hearing you. That's why I've stopped. I'm listening to you. Yeah. The audio is not working. Shweta-ji?
Yeah, it's done.
Is the audio now okay?
Yeah, now it's perfect.
Okay, great. I can also make the mic outside, make it a little clearer even. So, as I was saying, you usually don't hear about spirituality and the importance of spirituality in summits and conferences and events that are rooted in financial prosperity, that are rooted in the idea of being a millionaire. But the truth is that on every single level, spirituality is actually our greatest and our most important tool and key. And even on just the most superficial business, financial, economic, productivity level, we know that spirituality there also is the key. In fact, so many companies all over the world have started bringing in spiritual programs into their companies because of the role that spirituality offers to business. So Apple, for example, now has 30 minutes a day of paid time for all their employees to be able to meditate. They have meditation rooms, whether it's Apple, whether it's Google, whether it's Hewlett-Packard, whatever the different companies may be. So many of these companies now have meditation rooms in the businesses and are actually paying people on the clock to meditate. Because what they're finding, and in fact, McKinsey & Co. did a big research study that showed that companies that encourage their employees to meditate not only were happier, which makes sense, not only were more peaceful, which makes sense, but actually were more productive, were actually better at the business. So we know that spirituality actually increases our creativity, it increases our bottom line, it increases everything that even on that superficial business level we are looking for. But our lives are not only on that superficial level. Even people in business know we're not looking just about business. We're not looking just about the economy. We're looking about a fullness of our lives and who we are. And spirituality is that which actually gives us as people the very best possibility of fulfilling on every level what we are here on earth for. These days, wherever you go, whatever news channel you turn online or on Google, all you hear about is all of these companies competing for a vaccine to COVID, which is great. There should be one. Sooner rather than later, obviously. Let's get our world healthy again. But the truth is that after COVID, it's just going to be something else. Another virus, a superbug, lack of water, a refugee epidemic, climate change. There is so much that is literally lining up to wreak havoc upon our planet. And what it makes us realize, what everyone who is really deeply thinking about this knows, it's not just a vaccine we need. It's an entire shift in the consciousness of the planet. The vaccine will treat this particular strand, this particular strain of COVID-19. But what about when it mutates? What about next year's strain? What about the next coronavirus? Then we just spend our lives looking for vaccine after vaccine after vaccine. And that's where spirituality is actually that which gives us the shift in consciousness that is what we need to ensure that actually who we are and our worlds change. Just one brief moment. If everyone who's not speaking could mute your microphones. There's a lot of background noise coming in. तो बस जितने लोग अभी नहीं बोल रहे हैं अगर सभी अपनी mic को mute पे रख सकेंगे तो फिर then we'll end up having the audio be even more clear. बहुत धन्यवाद. So spirituality gives us that shift in consciousness that we really need. And it's a shift that we need to take us from I to we. Most of us spend our lives focused on I, me. But as my Guru Puja Swamiji always says, when I becomes we, then illness becomes wellness. And literally, if you look at the words, if we literally change the I in illness to we, then literally the word illness becomes the word wellness. But we're not looking at it just semantically. We're looking at it with regard to how our entire world is functioning. And this is where we need this shift from I to we, from illness to wellness. So it's not just about me and mine and what I want and what I can earn, but actually about we, a collective, cohesive we, the planet that we live on. Every single being on this planet is pervaded by the same divine. When spiritually we learn and we realize and we experience, that divine lives in me. At the same time, we recognize and experience and realize that divine lives in all. And so that divine that pervades me pervades the planet. And so there is absolutely no way that any of us can really be healthy unless we are all healthy. There's no way that any of us can be at peace unless we are all at peace. There is no prosperity, there is no abundance, there is no success on any level that does not take the cohesive whole into consideration. It's like saying my finger is healthy. Well, then my finger can only be healthy if my entire body is healthy. If I've got an infection in my bloodstream, it's going to enter my finger. And if I get an infection in my finger, it's going to enter my bloodstream. It's going to end up in my heart. It's going to end up in my lungs. It's going to end up in my brain. In the same way, in our world, in our societies, on our planet, if we really want wellness, we have to shift from a focus on I to a focus on we. And we need to shift in our consciousness from this idea that somehow wealth and prosperity is my ability to purchase these luxury items like things made from precious wood that comes from the rainforest. That's not prosperity and abundance. Prosperity and abundance is the clarity to be able to recognize that the wood in the rainforest should stay in the rainforest, that it doesn't belong in my home, on my shelves, on my dining room table. We need a shift in consciousness to this idea that somehow wealth and prosperity can be measured by how much I can buy and consume, purchase, gobble up, to recognizing that actually prosperity and abundance is how much my cup runneth over, and therefore how much I can serve and can give to others. Prosperity and wealth is not about what I can grab, but about how much I can share. And interestingly, that's not determined by what's in my bank account. I used to think it was. When I lived in America, I would have told you, yeah, my ability to share, my ability to have enough is based on the numbers of my bank account. Bahut hai, wonderful. Fir main band sakungi. Kam hai, to fir mujhe sab rakhna hai apne liye. But when I came to India and I saw the people here in India, especially the people living here on the banks of Ganga, who were living so far below the Western standards of poverty, but whose hearts were so open, so overflowing. All they wanted to do was share and feed and give. And I realized abundance is not measured by what I have, but it's measured by how I feel about what I have. If I feel like I don't have enough, I'm poor. Main gareeb hoon. But if I feel like I have more than I need, कि मेरा पास इतना है कि मैं आपको भी खिलाना चाहती हूँ, then I am living in abundance. And that was the experience that I had here. These were people who had so much less than anyone I knew. But if you said to them something about being poor, they would say, nahi, 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 hum gareeb nahi hai, wo gareeb hai. There was always someone they could point to who was worse off than they are. In their mind, in their hearts, their cup runneth over. That shift in consciousness, that it's not about what I have, but it's about whether my heart is engaged in grabbing and hoarding and yearning and wanting, or my heart is engaged in giving and sharing. So as we come together and we speak here about this spiritual quotient, what is that? Well, first of all, it's important to realize it is also intelligence. It's not IQ or SQ. It's not as though spirituality somehow is separate from intelligence. Spirituality is intelligence. It's just a different type of intelligence. It's an intelligence that isn't rooted in what I've read in a book, how many facts I have, how many things I can do. But rather it's intelligence in understanding the nature of who I am and how to navigate my way through the world. There's a beautiful story that I love of 3 men who are on a boat. One evening they've gone out for a beautiful boat journey, and one of them is a mathematician, one of them is a scientist, one of them is a philosopher. And on the boat, there's naturally a boatman, who's the guy who took them out for their sunset tour. And the mathematician says to the boatman, he says, "Tell me, Mr. Boatman, do you know how to do advanced mathematical equations?" And the boatman says, "No." He says, "I'm not educated in that way. I don't know how to do trigonometry. I don't know calculus. I don't know all of those advanced equations." The mathematician says, "Well, then I think at least 30% of your life is in vain." The boatman says, "I only know how to take God's name in the morning when I wake up and God's name at night before I sleep." And the mathematician says, "Yes, definitely. At least 30% of your life has gone in vain." The scientist says to him, "Well, all right, so maybe you're not a math guy, but you must know some science. You must at least know Newton's laws of physics. You must understand some type of science." Boatman shakes his head. He says, "I only know how to give more than I receive. I only know how to use every minute and every moment in service of my divine Lord. I don't know Newton's laws or any of the other types of science." Scientist shakes his head sadly and he says, "Well, then at least 40% of your life has gone in vain." Lastly, the philosopher says, "Ha, koi baat nahi. You don't do math, you don't do science. Lekin philosophy you must understand. Philosophy though is at our core. Whether it's Plato and Aristotle or Vedanta, either way, thoda sa kuch na kuch, philosophy you must be knowing." The boatman closes his eyes and he enters this beautiful meditative trance, and he says, "I'm not educated in that way." Philosopher looks at him and he says, "Oh, then at least 50% of your life has gone in vain." And at that moment, a wave comes. The skies turn stormy. The boatman understands a storm is going to come, and this boat is going to capsize. And as a wave carries this boat out of the water into the sky, the boatman says to his passengers, "Do you know how to swim?" "No," they all cry. And as the wave brings the boat face down, capsized, into the water, the boatman watches as the mathematician, the scientist, and the philosopher are pulled away in the storm to drown. And he sadly says, "I think 100% of your lives have gone in vain." And the tragedy of this is that our lives are spent trying to acquire all of the math, all of the science, all of the philosophy, as though somehow that were enough. And they're beautiful, they're wonderful, they help us in our education, they help us in our careers, they help us invent and innovate. The ability that we're able to have this conversation via these cameras and wires and waves in the air that we can't even see. It's due to science, it's due to math, it's due to this technology. But when the waves of life come, in the middle of the night, when we wake up, in that darkness, none of the math, none of the science, none of the philosophy, none of it can help us. Spirituality is that which actually teaches us how to swim in the ocean of life. Because storms are there. Never think that spirituality is an inoculation against the waves of life. It is not. Spirituality is not an inoculation of the stock market crashing, or you getting fired, or a loved one getting sick and dying, or you getting sick and dying. It's not an inoculation against it raining on the day of your picnic. What it is the intelligence of knowing how to swim. It is that anchoring, that grounding that keeps us afloat, even as the waves come, even as the storms of life come. And that is what the spiritual intelligence is. It tells us who we are. So frequently these days we're so focused on just what to do, what to do. How do I make $1 million? What do I need to do to make $1 million? What do I need to do to be successful? But we're missing the most important piece, which is, who am I? Because what a doctor does to make $1 million, what the president of a company does to make $1 million, what a basketball player does to make $1 million, what a singer does to make $1 million, what an investor does to make $1 million, what someone who goes out panning for gold does to make $1 million. They're completely different. And each of them, again, even going back to just the most superficial level of our skills, our abilities. But each of them is determined on the individual. And so there isn't one cookie cutter about how to be successful. The only cookie cutter is know who you are. And spirituality is that.
Dr. Sadhviji.
Yes.
Spirituality is that which shows us who we are. It shows us the nature of who we are. I think अगर सभी लोग अपनी माइक म्यूट पे रख सकेंगे, that would be wonderful, क्योंकि बीच बीच में और लोगों की सारे आवाज़ आ रहे हैं. मैं 2 मिनट रुक जाऊंगी. अगर कोई बात करनी है फिर मैं दोबारा शुरू कर लेती हूँ.
So sorry.
Okay. This is spiritual.
ठीक है? Okay. So, spirituality gives us that awareness of who we are, which is actually the most precious and important piece of intelligence. It is the most precious treasure for our lives, because without that, we have no idea where to go. Normal education, normal knowledge is wonderful for our careers, but not for who we are. If I ask you anything external, people can tell us, but internally, we don't know who we are. We don't know the nature of ourselves. And when we don't know that, then we look outside for trying to understand who we are. So first we start doing something, then we identify based on it. But the dilemma with that is we then lose the entire purpose of what life is for. It's not about the $1 million. Have it, wonderful, no problem. But that's not the ultimate piece. Look, Dwarka was a city made of gold. A millionaire, a billionaire's paradise, an entire city made of gold. But Lanka was also a city made of gold. And Lanka was hell. The distinction between Dwarka and Lanka had nothing to do with the millions over here and the lack over here, or the gold over here versus the pebbles over here. Both of them were cities made of gold. The only distinction was Dwarka was a city ruled by Bhagwan Krishna, by God. Lanka was a city ruled by Ravan, by the demon king, possessed by ego, by greed, by ignorance. And so when we speak about wealth and prosperity and millions, recognize that it's not just about the goal. It's about who is running our show. Because when Ravan is running our show, even having a city made of gold, even having all the millions or all the billions, isn't enough to make our life heaven. For that, we need to make sure that our show, our lives, are being run by that divinity within us. This is where Mahatma Gandhiji said so beautifully, what is the point of that fast speed that has no direction? And that's what is happening tragically so much in the world of business, of entrepreneurship. Every day there's God knows how many more startups. Wherever you look, startups, startups, wonderful. Yes, startup. But let us know where we're going. शुरू तो बहुत बढ़िया है, शुरू तो कर दो, लेकिन शुरुआत के बाद जाएंगे कहाँ हम लोग? स्टार्टअप के बाद कहाँ जा रहे हैं हम लोग? और यही हमें देखना है. Along with starting up, we have to really ask ourselves, where are we headed? You can't start a successful journey if you don't know where you're going. Sure, a joy ride is fun for a little while, get in the car with friends and roam around. But very quickly you run out of gas or you run out of money. Doesn't last, it's not sustainable. On the journey of our lives, speed is not enough. We need direction. So the dilemma with us these days is, the speed is there. The technology is there, the ability is there, the knowledge is there, the possibilities are there, everything is there. But our destination is wrong. And so, as we think in our minds, destination millionaire, the dilemma with that is that if that is my destination, I've held that as my destination because on some level I believe that by becoming a millionaire, I will be happy. अगर मैं सब लोगों से पूछ लूँगी, why have you joined this summit? Why do you want to be a millionaire? Most people will say, because then I will be happy. And that is what we have to realize, is the destination, even though we're calling it Destination Millionaire, ultimately really what we're looking for is happiness. And the tragedy is, if I'm only focused on making money in any way, at any cost, forsaking anything, I may make the money, but I'm actually not going to get what I really was looking for in it. You know, after I had been in India for about a year or two, I conducted a scientific study. I'm a scientist by heart, by academic history, as Sadhviji was saying in the beginning. And I love science. Even having come on this path of spirituality, actually, my love of science has even increased, because I realized so much where spirituality and science overlap. So after I'd been in India for about a year or two, I conducted a scientific study. I was back in America visiting, and I spoke to about 10 different people I know, all of whom were people I know very well, family members or friends or close acquaintances. And they were all very successful people, but they were all successful in different tiers. So for example, someone was a tenured professor at Stanford, highest level in the sphere of academia. Someone was the chairman of a Fortune 500 company. Someone was a CEO. Someone was a Hollywood actress. Someone was a Hollywood singer. Someone played on the LA Lakers basketball team. So all of the different spheres, academia, business, Bollywood, Hollywood, world of entertainment, sports. I spoke to people who were at the top of all of them. And every one of them, I didn't tell them I was doing a study, of course. I just was chatting with them. कैसा है? मैं तो अभी थोड़ी कुछ दिन के लिए इंडिया से वापस आई. कैसे चल रहे हैं? I just was having this conversation. But in the middle of the conversation, I asked them my one core study question, which was, are you happy? क्या आप खुश हैं? And what I got was amazing. Every single one of these people still had one thing between them and happiness. Every one of them either said, I will be happy when. And of course the blanks were different. Some said, I will be happy when, you know, the kids grow up and finally move out of the house, or I will be happy when I finally get this project cleared that I've wanted, or I will be happy when my tour is over and I get to come back home and be quiet. I will be happy when I lose the 10 pounds I gained over the holidays, whatever it might be. Or they said, I would be happy if the kids would clean up their room. My husband would work a little bit less. There were less traffic on the freeway. I could just lose these 10 pounds that I gained and squeeze back into my favorite skirt. Whatever it was, every one of these people who were at the pinnacle, at the top of what everyone else is forsaking, their health, their spiritual practice, their families, their lives to attain. These people still had at least one thing between them and happiness. And what that made conclusively clear for me is that the money doesn't buy the happiness. It's a cliche. But cliches become cliches for a reason. Enough people say something that's true enough times, it becomes a cliche. So when we speak about being a millionaire, that's wonderful. No problem at all. There's nothing wrong with abundance. The universe loves abundance. Look all over the place. Look all over the place, wherever you are. Everything is abundant. The flowers on the trees are abundant. The apples on an apple tree are abundant. The strands of grass in the ground are abundant. The blueberries on blueberry bushes are abundant. The stars in the night sky are abundant. So the universe loves abundance, nothing wrong with that. But don't think that in that abundance of bills, rupees or dollars or euros or whatever it may be, that somehow your happiness, your peace, your joy, your meaning in life is somehow going to exist there. It doesn't. And that is where our spiritual quotient is what is so important. That's where our destination is so important. And our spiritual quotient gives us that. Because in spirituality we say our destination in life, our highest purpose in life, our dharma in life, is to actually experience, to know the truth of who we are. That perfection, that fullness, that wholeness, that infinite consciousness. And so when we hold that as our destination, then yeah, of course, abundance will come. Prosperity will come. It's the nature of the universe. But it will come in such a way that we will have the joy and the meaning and the purpose in our life along with that abundance. And this is where spirituality, not only in our own personal lives, but in the world of business, in the world of entrepreneurship, is so important. And you all working in that world, working in these fields, it's up to you. Stop this distinction between business or spirituality, success or spirituality, entrepreneurship or spirituality. No. We need innovation today. We need entrepreneurship today. But we need innovation and entrepreneurship that tells us not only how many steps I've taken, but actually how much those steps have helped and healed the people of this planet. We need technology today. Not just that brings the world to our fingertips, but that reminds us that there is a world beyond our fingertips. We need a technology that wakes us up, that pushes us forward, that reminds us, that coaxes us to act, and that gives us those tools to actually channel all of our energy, all of our ability, all of our creativity into a way that's not just about posting and liking and sharing and earning, but actually is about giving and serving and creating. We need an economic model that is not based just on what the price tag says, not based on what is the bare minimum we can sell this item for and therefore compete with the guy next door. But we need an economics that understands that the price tag is not just what it costs me, the store owner, to sell it, but is actually the cost upon the soil, the land, the water, the air, all of those who work in our companies, the women, the children, all of those who produce the items that we are selling, their families. You pick up, a t-shirt, anything made out of simple cotton, sari in my case. Pick up anything. The price tag is not just that which a small dukan sells it for, but the price tag is actually how much did that factory pollute our air, our soil, our water? What about the people who grew the cotton? What about their families? What about the women and the children working maybe in sweatshops to sew it? And this is where the economic model that we need is one rooted in our spiritual tenet of Vasudev Kutumbakam, that says the world is a family. And none of us, just as none of us can be healthy unless we're all healthy, none of us can be successful unless together we are all successful. So the business of today needs to be one that really thinks beyond just net profits and losses, but that actually looks at our entire planet and the impact upon the planet of what we are producing. If we want to ensure that our spiritual quotient is high, we need to recognize a few things. Number one, we need to recognize that who I am is not what I do. We need to stop identifying ourselves based on our jobs, based on the color of my skin, based on the clothes I wear. That's not who you are. If I call you on the phone while you're driving down the freeway and I say, "Who are you?" And you say, "Oh, I'm exit 40." I'll say, no, I didn't say where are you, I said who are you? And then if you say, "Oh, now I'm at the halfway point," I'd say again, not where are you, silly, who are you? We all understand as we drive down the path in our cars that there's a big difference between who we are and where we are. But this color of my skin, this amount of money that I have, this career that I have, this house that I have, this success that I have, this is like saying I'm exit 51. It's just the temporary intersection at this temporary place of time and space of where this particular incarnation has gotten to. It's not who I am. So number one, spiritual quotient, essential piece. Number one, recognize who you are is not what you do. First, understand that who you are is divine. Who you are is infinite, boundless, soul, spirit, consciousness, love. What you do is spirit in action, truth in action, consciousness in action, love in action. And my favorite story about that, lest you think, "Oh, but then how am I going to do business?" So my favorite story about that is of the woman who's home alone one day and there's a knock on her door. She opens her door and there's 3 men standing on her porch. She says, "Come in, come in." They tell her, "Is your husband home?" So she says, "No, but he'll be home later." So they say, "All right, well, when your husband comes home, let us know, we'll come inside." She says, "Okay." And they say, "But I am love. With me is success and wealth. All 3 of us cannot enter your home. Only one of us can. So ask your husband which of us he wants to enter the home." So when her husband comes home and the kids come home, she tells them about these 3 men in the yard. So the husband says, I think let's have success come into the home. Because then our wonderful son will get the job that he's been wanting. But the boy says, Mom, Dad, instead of success, let's have wealth enter the home, because then, of course, it won't matter if I get the job. Then we'll automatically have money. They say, yeah, you're right. Good point. But then their daughter says, Mom, Dad, Bhaiya, I think rather than success or wealth, let's let love enter the home. Because then whatever else we have, at least we'll have love together. So the family, of course, feels thoda sa sharam aate hain ki kitni samajhdar hai wo. So the wife goes outside and she says to the three men, which of you is love? One of the men stands and raises his hand, and she says, you can enter our home. And love starts to walk in, or unke piche, the other two men start to enter as well. And she holds up her hands and she says, I'm so sorry. We've chosen love, and as you mentioned, only one can enter. So love says, that's true if you had chosen success or wealth. But wherever love goes, success and wealth always follow. So, number one, recognize who you are. That's the core. Number two, and I'll go through these very quickly so that we still have a couple of minutes for questions and answers at the end. Number one, recognize who you are is not what you do. What you do will always go up and down. The stock market will always go up and down. But who you are is always full, always divine, always whole, always love. Number two, recognize that business is not a vacuum. It is a part of society, not separate from society. And business, as I said, can only be successful not when it takes from society, not when it harms or steals or oppresses or suppresses, but it can only be successful when it enables the entire society to survive and thrive. So when you think about what you're going to start up, ask not, how much can I grab from the world? How much can I push others away so that I can get ahead? As though somehow there were a finite pie of success. But rather think about, how can I, with my abilities, my tools, my skills, my creativity, my initiative, how can I be a tool through which abundance flows through the world? Because if it flows through you, it'll flow to you. Whatever flows through me for others, naturally I'm the first beneficiary. So if you become a tool for success and abundance for society, for others, well, naturally, success and abundance will come to you first. And lastly, recognize that what you are creating in your business, in your company, is your entire world. You are not separate from it. It is your world. And it is the world that we all have to occupy. And I want to just end, and then we'll have just 2-3 minutes for questions. But I want to just end quickly with a last favorite story of a man who was a building contractor. And he was just getting ready to retire. He was tired of being a contractor. And when he went to his boss and told him, I'm done, the boss said, just one more house. Just one last house you can do for me. So the guy thought, oh, fine, all right. But man nahi tha, dil nahi tha, he was not interested at all. He cut corners wherever he could. He thought, ki wo jo thoda sa paisa I'm getting to do this, as many corners as I can cut, थोड़ा सा ऊपर से मैं अपने लिए ले लेता हूँ. I'll just skim a little off the top for myself. Cut corners, did a shoddy job. When he went to hand the keys to this home to his boss on the day before he retired, the boss took the keys and he put them back in the man's hands and he said, "As your retirement gift, I'm giving you this home. Let this home be your gift." And I love that story because we think sometimes that what we are creating is only impacting others. That the oppression, the suppression, the cheating, the corner cutting, the pushing each other away, that's only impacting others. But it actually is creating the world that we live in. So as you create your business, as you innovate, as you start up, recognize you are creating not just a business, not just a company. You are creating your world, and you are co-creating the world for all of us. So take that power and co-create a beautiful, positive, unified, love-filled, sustainable world for yourself and for all. And I'm happy to open it up for a few minutes of questions if anyone has any. But Bhaveshji, Shwetaji, you'll have to say the questions because I'm not able to see anything on the screen.
Wonderful, Sadhviji. This is totally divine and we are blessed. We have one question from Ms. Robina Latham. What does cause and effect mean to you, Sadhviji?
Cause and effect. What cause and effect means is that we are creating our own world. Cause and effect is what our sages and saints and rishis called the law of karma. As I do, so I will receive. If I plant an apple seed, I'm going to get an apple tree. Cause and effect means we're not victims. It means there's not someone, some being sitting out there in the ether. Sitting out there in the ether, somehow pulling the strings of our lives like we were a marionette, or rolling the dice as though our lives were just a game of chance in some kind of cosmic game of dice. But cause and effect means each one of us, every one of us, actually has the ability to create our own world. And we are creating our world, whether we are doing it intelligently or unintelligently. We are creating it. And this is where our spiritual intelligence is so important. Because whatever we create, we live in it. And so if I am creating separation, me versus you, competition, anger, greed, lust, then I'm building Lanka, brick by brick. As the great contractor, the great architect of Lanka, I'm literally channeling the inner Ravan, and then it shouldn't surprise me if the city of my life starts to feel like hell. But instead of that, if I channel the inner Krishna, of divinity, of love, of oneness, of consciousness, of truth, of dharma, then brick by brick, I can build the city of Dwarka. And the easiest and quickest way to do this, the easiest way to see cause and effect, is in our own thoughts. Every time you have a thought, think of it as a vehicle. A car, a bus, a train, a plane. It's going somewhere. It has a destination. If a thought comes in my mind, oh God, how dare he? How dare he be so mean? Doesn't he know? Doesn't he know who I am? Well, if I get onto that vehicle, that thought vehicle, 5 minutes from now, I will have arrived at destination misery. And when I see that person again, I will have arrived at destination conflict. And in between then, I will live in destination grudge, destination separation, destination pain. But I have to realize that it's me who jumped onto that train. The minute that thought came, how dare he? Kya samajhte aap apne aap ko? What does he think of himself? That's a vehicle. That is the cause that leads to the effect. Our thoughts are these causes, are these vehicles, because no action takes place, no karma takes place without an accompanying thought. And so if I watch my thoughts and I really ask myself, do I want to go there? And I don't jump on any thought vehicles that aren't going where I want to go, then the effect in my life will be very different. If you have a friend and your friend says to you, okay, guess what? I'm going to take you in this beautiful vehicle, first class tickets. Chalo mera saath. What's the first question you're going to ask him? कहाँ जा रहे हम लोग? ये vehicle कहाँ जा रहे? जो ticket तुमने खरीद के मुझे दिया, वो कहाँ जाने के लिए? And if he says, it's a ticket to hell, guess what? First class seats, going to hell. क्या आप जाएंगे? क्या आप उसकी train में बैठ जाओगे? Of course not. It doesn't matter that it's first class. Nobody wants to end up in hell. And in the same way, when these thoughts come, thoughts of jealousy, thoughts of anger, thoughts of grudges, we have to recognize they're vehicles. And in the same way that a bus that goes by that's headed where we are not going, hum bas namaste karke bye. नहीं, मुझे नहीं बैठना है. Even the bus slows down to pick us up. We wave it on. नहीं, मुझे नहीं जाना. We wait at the gate at the airport for our plane to come. ऐसे नहीं कि पहले there's another plane तो उसमें बैठ जाऊं. It's at the gate. We know कि मुझे वहाँ नहीं जाना. I'm going to wait for my plane going to my destination. So when thoughts come of jealousy, of grudges, of competition, of scarcity, of lack, as though somehow we're all in competition, just give them a nice wave, but don't get on them. And wait until in that inner spirituality, you can generate a new thought, a different thought of peace, of oneness, of love, of connection, of fullness, and of abundance. Because lastly, abundance is not about eating caviar while others starve. It is not about living in a mansion while others live in shacks. It is about a mindset that says, my cup runneth over. And so cultivate that thought in your mind. Let that thought be the cause. Practice gratitude, practice love, practice sharing. The more you give, the more will come. The universe hates a vacuum. Physics tells us that. Give more will come. Serve more will come. Surrender more will come. Take charge of the causes that lead to the effects in your life. You are the one creating your own tomorrow. Today is created by the choices that you made yesterday and all the days before it. But tomorrow, next month, next year, is created by the choices you are making today. So grab that cause. Grab it spiritually. Grab it with that intelligence.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sadhviji, for these wonderful, insightful, divine thoughts from your words and your stories. And that spirituality is what teaches us to swim in the ocean of life. And that's so deep. Thank you so much. And just as Sadhviji spoke and gave us a lot of insights about spiritual quotient, we also got an added cue, which is insights to happiness quotient. So you see, everyone who's watching, there's much, much more than that is promised for these sessions. Going ahead, I would want to invite our next speaker, and just taking a reference from what Shweta Shalini ji said earlier,